Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first face-to-face AGM in about 3 years. It's so nice to see you here, and it's so nice to have so many of you who are attending today. Before I officially open things, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if anybody needs to use the lavatories, you go out the door and you go down this golden staircase, and they're at the bottom, and they're all open. They may look like they're locked, but they're not. They're open. I'd also like to begin by welcoming a couple of our councillors. We have Barbara here, Asmovich, and we have Peter Lilly sitting over there. Are you a councillor? What's your name? Regents Park Ward. Well, thank you all for coming. And I have apologies from Ian Rowley and Karen Scarborough. So, the first order of business, you all should have received, by the way, a list of proposed committee members and an annual report. We handed them out a little while ago. So if you don't have one, let me know and we can get them to you. You should all have them so you can look at them as a reference. So we're going to start off, as I always do, which is to hope that you've had a chance to quickly look through the annual report if you didn't get one delivered to you. And I hope that my first job is to ask you all to receive the annual report. Are you all happy with the annual report? If so, raise your hands. All happy? Okay. The annual report is received. I'd like to now introduce the chairman, Michael Bolt, who's going to do his thing. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Bolt, as most of you know, Chairman of the Marylebone Association. I'll try and, there we are. Right, I'd like to start off tonight actually with an anniversary, and that's our anniversary, which deserves a mention, has slid past, and that's the 40th year of our presence in Marylebone. We were formed in March 1982. The Marylebone Association, here I have it, was formed as a result of new arrangements of consulting of media societies that the City of Westminster decided to introduce. And they decided to introduce that because up to that time the St Marylebone Society was dealing with all the planning applications from their area and indeed St John's Wood right down to Oxford Street. And it was getting a bit much for them because development was increasing and has not stopped since. So, in fact, we sprung newly formed from the side of the SMS, and as they never failed to remind us, they are a much older sibling than us. They were formed in 1948 to protect the Nash Terraces in Regent's Crescent, which were in danger of demolition, believe it or not, so that council housing could be built on the site. They're obviously successful because we still see the Crescent there today. Although, ironically, part of it was knocked down in 2016 for luxury housing. By then it was Grade 1 listed, but that didn't stop them. However, it was restored to its former glory, so I suppose that's a bit different. So as far as the situation goes now, that is a situation that we had with that's the situation we had previously, and that is a situation we had from 1982. Since that time, we've expanded our ambit far wider than just planning, although that is still a very important part of our brief, and we'll be hearing from Neil shortly on just what we've been up to in that sphere. We now deal with all sorts of things from licensing to city and traffic management. As you know, we have a newsletter and managed to, over the years, in this time, that was back in 2010, it was paper and it came out bi-monthly. Then it went down to quarterly, I think, and then we moved online and we're back to a monthly newsletter, and we try and keep members well acquainted with everything we're doing over the period. So I would say that we have now got a fairly flourishing organisation, and 40 years on, we hope to see another 40 years into the future. The committee, of which this is a picture, but unfortunately not the whole committee. It's as much as we could stretch to. It is a bit bigger than that. There are some changes this year. After quite a long time stability, we're losing all our officers. I'm standing down. I finished my 3-year stint as chair, or my second 3-year stint as chair, and our treasurer is in Italy and rather likes it there, so he's leaving us. But luckily we've got a new treasurer, Neil Ritson, who is come highly recommended from Hydra, and he is going to, he's been let out by them and he's going to do the job for us. So we're very pleased to have him. But most importantly, we are losing Mr. Kevin Coyne, Honourable Secretary, who has been with us for a period of 25 years. In fact, he's been here before people had emails, and we were still faxing each other when he arrived. You were, I believe, a member of the Marylebone Association Committee in the time of Audrey Lewis, and have actually mentored and assisted all the chairs since then. We've had a series of rotating chairs with the new system that Audrey Lewis brought in, and following on from that, most chairs have a 3-year period. So it came the point that Kevin was the sort of still point around all else rotating, because he was still there and became really, and has become, the face of the Marylebone Association. He's done more than that, though, because there have been times when he's gone out of his way to act for the Marylebone Association on great issues of the day. He was with me and others setting up the forum in the early days. We had the great boundary dispute, if you remember that. And you remember going to the heart of Fitzrovia and, and dealing with them there. We had a lot of issues before we actually got a forum set up. And Kevin played a big role in that. In fact, he became forum chair. And he stayed forum chair right up to the time when he resigned, when the Oxford Street issue commenced, to help deal with that, and became one of the leading people on that. So throughout this time, he's been a kingpin in the organisation, and he's also been always there, of a ready wit and a great sense of humour. So I've all appreciated having him here. So tonight, I'd like to present him with this token of our appreciation. Thank you. Thank you. The token of appreciation is a tankard which has been inscribed in recognition of Kevin's 25 years of service. I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Michael. Who would ever have thought that a boy from Boston in the US would end up in Marylebone, never mind as chairman of the secretary of the Marylebone Association for this long. During this time, as Michael has said, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and interesting things happen in Marylebone and in our community. But throughout it all, I've really enjoyed working with the Marylebone Association and with all of you. I now live out in the East End, which is a very different experience, I have to say. And I miss Marylebone a lot. Stephen and I both do. But having said that, and the reason why I miss it is, because of all the friends, a lot of you are here today, that we have made over the years. A lot of good friends, and friends that we still stay close to, even though we go out to the East End. So I'm not going to say much more because we have a lot to get through. But thank you again, Michael. It's been a pleasure working with you and all of you. And our paths will cross, even though it won't be through the Marylebone Association Committee anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I hope you enjoy your tankard, which you can unveil
as soon as I can.
in the near future. Right, so I'm just going to deal with some of the issues that have confronted us over the last year, and probably the key issue is the funeral of Her Late Majesty, and I think that we can all agree that Westminster then became the eyes of the UK and probably the world for that period of time, and I think that it's something that Westminster Council can pat themselves on the back, acquitting themselves very well on. And I think the new mayor, who had only been weeks in the post, also filled a key role and did that very capably. The new mayor, in fact, was a Labour mayor for the very good reason that after the May elections, we had a Labour ward in the West End, but also Labour majority within Westminster, for the first time actually since Westminster City Council has been formed. So here we see our new wards, which have changed from the last election in 2018. Before that, we had the old BDS ward and Marylebone High Street ward, stretching down to the Oxford Street, and after that, been swept away, and we got Marylebone ward now, which runs along Wigmore Street, and then underneath that is West End ward. And the importance about that is that means that the West End ward actually covers the whole area of Oxford Street. Before that, we had the three wards that abutted it. On the subject of Oxford Street, that probably came to a head this year. And it's been something that has been around, certainly ever since I've been on the committee. It started off in about 2012 with a new West End company, I think in the last catalogue of events anyway. There's been attempts to pedestrianise off the street for long before that. And they decided it would be a good idea, and nothing much happened. And then after that, we got the West End Partnership, which was a distinguished body of businesses and a few token residents and landowners, probably now forgotten, but it was important at the time. And they came up with the idea that there was too much traffic on Oxford Street and that it should be pedestrianised. The fatal flaw in that was they didn't really have an idea about where the actual traffic would go, and hence, as far as we're concerned, that was going to be rather a no for us, because we knew where the traffic would go. Nothing much happened then until the Mayor Khan was elected in 2016. When he became elected, he had visions of walking down a tree-lined boulevard of Oxford Street, unimpeded by any traffic whatsoever and unworried where it'd go. And even that would have stayed there probably if it hadn't been for Westminster joining him the year following, because up to that time they were against it and they owned the road, so nothing much could be done. However, in 2017, Westminster Council decided to join in with TfL, and pedestrianised project commenced. And that basically was how it was presented to the electorate up to 2018, just before the elections, and it looked like nothing could stop it, because we had TfL, we had Westminster, we had the mayor, and we had all big businesses also in favour of it. We had everybody in favour of it, really, but it was stopped. And at the last minute elections, Westminster stood back from that, and they gave a promise that the street would remain open to and free to traffic. However, only a year later, Westminster Council, having been elected, came back with an idea to close the street again, this time by forming piazzas for either side of Oxford Street and a traffic-free area right in front of Selfridges for certain parts of the day, and I think a couple of other places as well. And that bumbled along with much opposition right up until COVID, when, I'll just put a picture of the piazza suggestion there, right up to COVID. At that stage, it was discovered that various traffic programs could be implemented by means of ETOs, and these experimental traffic orders did not need any consultation. So the idea was to bring the piazzas in without any consultation and then worry about it afterwards. And that also started because the infrastructure works to do the piazzas actually got going. So it looked like a full conclusion. And again, that was stopped. This time, in about September 2020, and that was basically because of the Mount debacle and the fallout from that. So basically then things subsided, but it was only put back for full consultation. It wasn't pulled entirely. So then we get to the elections this year in May, and we have both of our councillors, both sets of councillors, both the Conservative councillors and the Labour councillors against the piazzification, and they both promised that they would oppose it. As it happened, after the elections, it was Labour it fell to decide, because they, to the surprise of many, actually won the elections, not only in our area, with West End Ward became Labour, but also they took control of the council. And in fairness to them, although the manifesto was a bit ambiguous, they came out almost straight away and agreed that the street should not be pedestrianised. And only last month, we had a new Oxford Street plan through, and that confirms that view. They're not being pedestrianised. There are some issues there, and we're on the stakeholders group to talk about those. It's not entirely perfect, but the main principle has gone through, and it's with some satisfaction that after a long struggle, and at the end of my term as chairmanship, I can turn around and say to you that for the foreseeable future, we are free from having all of Oxford Street's traffic pushed down our streets. And so I'm very pleased that that conclusion has been reached. It does not mean, though, that all is right with Oxford Street. We've still got problems with candy stores, tacky souvenir shops and the like. And that is something that Westminster by themselves can't really fully tackle, because a lot of it is down to the freeholders and getting them to control those that they sublet to. And that in itself can be very difficult. So there are still issues with Oxford Street, but at least time can be spent concentrating on that rather than feeling about trying to divert all the traffic away from it. And round the corner, we have Regent Street. And there are some issues here as well. This is an artist's vision of what the new Regent Street should look like. Again, this came in under a ETO. So the original version, which was to bring all the traffic in Regent Street down to one lane, has been implemented, and at the moment there is an attempt to there's going to be a consultation about making this permanent. We're against this, Mayfair's against it, Soho's against it, and Fitzrovia's against it, and we're all against it because it has repercussions in our area. If the traffic can't get down there, then it clutters up the streets trying to get into it. Here we're also affected by it because we've had a pinch point at the top of Oxford Circus, and that means that the traffic then builds back often past Old Souls Church along Upper Regent Street. The issue with it basically is that when a bus stops or when something unloads, everything stops. Nothing can get round that, and in fact, a few things tried to get around it, and they now put some bollards down the middle of the centre aisle, so nothing can now. And this creates problems for everybody, including the emergency services. Our friends in Soho regularly report that fire engines and ambulances have a hell of a amount of trouble getting down there. So we are going to make our views known during the consultation about Regent Street and where we think that should be going. Also, our MP is equally concerned about it, and she's written to Crown Estates, because Crown Estates own most of Regent Street, and they're the people behind it. Manchester Square, we've also had a bit of dealings with this time. I hope to have had a nice picture of the square there to show you first, but in fact that's an artage image of the proposed pedestrianisation of the top part of the square. We see no reason for this. We saw no reason for this because the square works perfectly well as it is, and basically the traffic is not that great in that area. And if it's pedestrianised at the top and you get that piazza in front of the Wallace collection, then all the traffic's going to be diverted up and around George Street. So you get you get the classic diversification of traffic through other areas rather than where it's travelling without too much trouble at the moment. It was also an example of another poor consultation, because there was very little attempt to contact residents. And so although a lot of people were in favour, it turned out that nearly all of those that had been consulted were businesses. This was going to go ahead, and the only reason it didn't is it was put back because the election's coming up. And again, it's something that after elections was scrapped. I think the new administration had a look at it and took the same view, that there wasn't much wrong with the square, and why mess around with the existing position. Another threat to heritage we've had this year has been from the White Paper. Now, the White Paper basically decided that in certain circumstances it'd be a good idea to do away with the petty encumbrance of being able to object to a planning permission, planning application. And it had an idea of zoning various areas, and if the area is in the wrong zone, then that would go ahead without having to get the traditional planning consent. This was regarded as a very bad idea by very many people, including our MP. Again, she wrote a letter about that, and including the electorate in 2 by-elections who made their views known to the Conservative government about this, and after that it was pulled. And we thought that was that. And then when Liz Truss came back and the Dash for Growth appeared, it seemed that the White Paper was going to revisit us. Now it's back in the safer hands of Michael Gove, and I believe that we are once again rescued from that. But it's something else I've been writing about during the year. Marks and Spencer's. This application has now finished its public inquiry and has really divided opinion. And that again is with Michael Gove to make the final decision on. There's 2 views here. Marks and Spencer's regard this as an inefficient piecemeal site which cannot effectively be redeveloped as it is. And they're willing to pour investment and money into it. Otherwise, they will leave Oxford Street. So, I mean, that's their view. And the opposite view, or the alternative view, is it's one of the few remaining examples of Art Deco architecture in Marylebone and should be kept for its cultural heritage alone and not be replaced with yet another faceless glass structure, which is incidentally the one on the right. The original one's the one on the left, in case you didn't spot that. And anyway, there's nothing to complement its surroundings, never mind the massive amount of embodied carbon associated with the demolition and the rebuild. Well, now we're waiting for the decision, but again, it's something written about quite a lot in the newsletter, and it'd be interesting to see what happens, because a lot of developers are keeping their eye on this. Does Westminster and the city plan mean what it says, which is basically trying to put a stop on increased amounts of demolitions and deal with the buildings as they are? We have, of course, a climate emergency, and there's a lot of embodied carbon involved in this. Neil will also be dealing with this when he comes to speak to you about planning matters in a minute. Gas lighting. This is, here we are. 2 gas lights. Aficionados may be able to tell at a glance which is which. It's quite easy when you actually see them in real life. Not so easy maybe on a photograph, but on the face of it, why should this matter to us? I think we've got about 6 of these in Marylebone. Well, it matters to us because it's a sort of another raid on heritage. There's only 300 of these in Marylebone, and they basically consume, they're being got rid of, or they're trying to get rid of them on mainly the idea, again, of greening, and that they're using gas. But they're equivalent to the output of 40 patio heaters. And I think we've got a question coming on this later about patio heaters and open areas and what people are doing about them. So really, the output's quite negligible. And it's a mystery to very many people why these lamps 100 years old and more, some of them have to be ripped out just for that. And there's something else behind it. But another reason I wanted to mention this is it's another consultation classic, because we had a consultation come out and a lot of people against this, and so it was suspended and they reviewed it. And they brought the consultation back. And the one thing you'd think we'd have on the consultation, which do you want the old gas lights to stay? But it's not there. All they're asking is what sort of new gas light do you want? And I think we've seen this in consultations time and time again, and we're getting a bit fed up with it. And we're really pushing Westminster now, especially as an opportunity of new administration. If you have a consultation, please try and make it worthwhile and go to the nub of what people are asking for, rather than what the council is trying to get through. Something that is very much on the side of heritage is tree planting. And this year we had the 1,000th anniversary, the 1,000th tree, planting in Marylebone with the West One West project, of which Mark Gazeler, who is here somewhere. You up there, Mark? Put his hand up at the back. He needs a call out because he's been really a key man. In fact, he's there at the back there in the raincoat, overseeing the spade diggers, such luminaries as our present Lord Mayor, Alan Titchmarsh, and our very own Councillor Scarborough, wielding a spade of intent. So we're very, very pleased that Mark's done this, and I believe he's continuing to look for a few other projects, a few other areas he can continue with before finally calling it a day. So, and Crossrail, just a brief word about them, simply because this month actually is the month when Crossrail is fully operative. So after all these years, it's been very much behind budget and behind time. But now it's here, it's with us, and this was incidentally one of the reasons given for the piazzas, because there'll be so many people coming to Oxford Street that it'd be very unsafe. And as the area was pedestrianised around Oxford Circus, which was an argument that we always found hard to understand, because Crossrail stations discharged away from Oxford Circus in Hanover Square and in Bond Street. So we couldn't really see that this would be putting too much extra pressure on Oxford Circus. Indeed, the opposite has happened, and we predicted the opposite would happen, and that's that footfall at Oxford Circus has fallen at the moment by approximately 15%. And it's fallen by 15% because it's taken away the pressure that was previously on the central line. This month, this year, we welcome the 4th bid in Marylebone, and the bid's a business investment district, and that's the Harley Street bid, and the 16th in Westminster. So Westminster Borough's now got more bids than anywhere else. For those that don't know, I mean, the business invested district is quite a good thing in a sense that it often brings with it cleaner streets and better security, as it has done for us in Marylebone. And as I say, we're now really very much covered with bids. There's nowhere else to go. So that's fine, but it has to be remembered that they're not democratic in the sense that their members are only big business. You have to have quite a high rateable value to belong to a bid. And of course, being in a bid, then you want to do various things that suit that bid. And we've had a bit of trouble with this in the past, and we've seen it in other areas of Westminster as well, how these organisations come along, have bright ideas, and then with their connections to the council push them through. In our area, actually, no better example is Oxford Street, where the USN company were the original initiators of the pedestrianisation proposal, because obviously it suited all their members to have a pedestrianised shopping centre. So we've got to be a bit careful about them. So we're lobbying for representation on them. Having said that, the Baker Street bid has actually done that voluntarily. We had a meeting with them recently, and they've put us and our fellow Means Society, St Marylebone Society, on a stakeholder group with some other residents. and they will be showing us their proposals before they come to consultation stage, because we know from good experience once it comes to consultation stage, apart from altering shapes of bollards and various other bits, nothing much is usually done. So we're quite pleased about that. We've also had quite a good working relationship with Marble Arch Bid, and so we usually get advanced knowledge of what they're talking about, and I'm sure that Harley Street Bid will be going along the same level as well. What have we got here? Yes, Spiegel Tent has visited us once again, and the only green space that we have in the south part of Marylebone off Oxford Street. We opposed it the first time round, but we could see a point because then it was the middle of COVID, so we didn't oppose it very hard, and we really did oppose it this time round. We lost the square for another summer, and really all it's done as far as residents report back to us is create noise and disruption and quite a lot of mess. So we just hope that we're not getting a Spiegel tent for another year next year, and we suggest that it can go somewhere else, maybe Marble Arch. Seymour Centre. We've had a considerable number of consultations on the Seymour Centre. In fact, probably more consultations than on any other single project I remember. And the strange thing is, with each consultation, it seems to get a little worse. It now seems to have annoyed just about every user group. The gymnasts don't like it because of where they're going to be put. The swimmers don't like it because the swimming pool is going to be made smaller. And people using the library are not very keen on it because the library is too far over to one side of Marylebone and not everybody can get to it. Anyway, having said that, that is an interesting juxtaposition has cropped up in the sense that Moxon Street, the Marylebone Square development, has now become part of it that was offered to the farmers market, which is 3,000 square feet on the ground floor, has now become available, and we have wondered whether there's any sort of room there for some manoeuvring of some. Anyway, that's something that Neil will also be dealing with in a minute when he speaks to you, and he will be speaking to you in a minute because I've just about finished with, last but not least, rubbish. Again, in some ways a small matter, but it doesn't matter how much money you spend on infrastructure. If you get it wrong with rubbish, then everything else just looks terrible and it's not going to work. And we do seem to be getting it wrong with rubbish. Quite rightly, the Labour administration criticised the council before they got into power for what they were doing. But in all fairness, we don't seem to have seen much of an improvement since. And we have councillors here tonight. So I don't know, maybe some of you want to ask questions about that. And also we have some written questions regarding that. So all these matters and more, believe it or not, are in the Marylebone Association AGM report, which you should have all had by post, and there are some available in the hall if you haven't. And those matters that in the AGM report are really filtered down from what we push out in the newsletter month by month. And if you're interested in any past newsletters, if you go to our website, all the past newsletters are available on the newsletter tab on the website. And I would say that I think a lot of the issues we deal with go beyond politics and efficacy. They go to who the area is actually being run for. And it has to be said that our experience over the last few years, well, a number of years really, is that it's not been run particularly for the residents. And the feeling is that it's been run far more for business. And we can see this in the sheer amounts of massive overdevelopment, major developments, which always get the go-ahead in face of any amount of opposition, no matter how much trouble and hassle, disruption they're going to cause to residents, which is always weighed away as not being a valid planning objection. We see it in the piazzas, the Spiegel tents, in the mounds, in the alfresco and road closures that we've endured over the last few years. I mean, none of those have been for us, and I don't think they've done business much good either, but that is where we stand. So we are here and have been here for 40 years to try and confront these issues on your behalf, and that's all I've tried to do in my period of chair. And indeed, it's what previous chairs have also attempted to do, and I'm sure it's what future chairs will also continue to do. And with your help, hopefully we will have some success. Thank you very much.
Hello. Next on the agenda is to receive the Treasurer's report, and you can find that in the annual report. So I ask if you're all happy with it, to put your hands up, and we'll approve the annual report. Okay? Thank you very much. And now I introduce Neil Wilson, who's going to give the chair of the Planning Committee, who's going to give the Planning Subcommittee report.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Neil Wilson. I'm the chair of the Planning Committee. I'm just going to start by firstly thanking the committee team that I work with, who we're all architects, and they put in a huge amount of time and effort into reviewing the applications that come across our desks and attending presentations as well. So there's a lot of time and effort put in by the team, and I'm very grateful for their hard work. I'm just going to I've just discussed a selected number of projects, both on site, coming to site, and in planning. So I'm just going to briefly go through. There are lots of other projects going on, and if there are questions on those other projects, with things I perhaps don't mention, please either raise it in questions if we have time later, or when we have a glass of wine in our hands later on. I can be contacted on my email. Oh, I'm just going to skip through. So I'm just going to talk about a few sort of major projects and you can see images on the screen. So Marylebone Square on the Moxon Street site is, as I'm sure you're all aware, is very much fully underway. It topped out in September, and they are cracking on to complete the project, and they will be completing towards the end of 2023. The farmers market, as I think you all know, is now on Abrook Street. It's an application to keep it permanently on Abrook Street, which is currently under consideration by Westminster. There are a few concerns about that farmers market permanently being on Abrook Street in relation to some of the traffic movements in and out of Marylebone Square. We have raised concerns with the council, and that is an ongoing conversation. We have also raised the issue that perhaps the farmers market could be in a better location in Marylebone. We've suggested various locations, and they are potentially considering them, but it's an item that's ongoing. The other item to do with Marylebone Square that Michael mentioned is the community space. As part of the original consent, there was 9,000 square feet of community space, 3,000 on the ground floor and 6,000 in the basement. There's a current application lodged with Westminster, which is under consideration, which seeks to change the balance of community and medical, to change the medical to part retail and part community, keeping the ground floor space as community. We're obviously concerned about the loss of any community space within that development. So we are having ongoing conversations in respect of that. We very much support the idea potentially of other users using that space, but again, don't want to lose anything and give it back to the developer. I will just move on. This is 19 to 35 Baker Street, which I think you've probably all seen. The original buildings were demolished, and Lang O'Rourke have been appointed and are now cracking on with a 300,000 square feet scheme. It's about £400 million project, mixed office, retail and residential. You can see on the left-hand side of this image, stretching down George Street, the residential and the main office block on Baker Street itself. There is a new connection from Baker Street all the way through to Gloucester Place with a retail, open retail space linking the two. Again, that's cracking on. We've got 3 big cranes on site, and that'll be on site until the end of 2024. This is an image of the new Debenhams site. I think you've probably all seen again. Works are in progress. This is a good example of a retrofit scheme. They have retained not all the concrete frame, but a large proportion of it, and is a good example of retrofit. Retrofit is something that we will generally always look to first. So if a building can be reused or portions of it reused, we would be seeking to ensure that is the case. Sometimes buildings can't be reused or can't be efficiently reused, and there is a case for a new build. Obviously, we'll come to the prime one, in fact, next. So Michael mentioned M&S. This is an image looking to the right up Orchard Street and to the left Oxford Street. So these inflections in the facades. As I think Michael mentioned, M&S was approved by Westminster's committee, Major Planning Committee. The Mayor also approved the scheme. He called it in, visited the stage 2 report, and then gave it approval. It was then, as Michael said, called in by the Secretary of State, Michael Gove at the time, and a public inquiry has just completed last week. The inspector's due to report in the next probably 3 months, and then the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, again, having not been for a time, but is now back, will take the view of the inspector and advise on the position. This is a difficult one in terms of the building. There are 2 arguments. One is heritage, the Art Deco Orchard House building, and one about sustainability. The site's made up of Orchard House, which makes up about a third of the site, and then a series of other later buildings, especially along Oxford Street and to the rear, around through the arch and around the back. So it is a difficult building to retrofit. So it's there are cases there's a case to be made both ways. Heritage-wise, there is a question later, but I'll answer it now. The listing was attempted on Orchard House, and it was turned down. So it's a building of recognised, the existing building, Orchard House, as a building of merit, but it is not listed. Therefore, it doesn't get the protection that would give it. The other argument is to do with sustainability and the amount of carbon being used in the demolition and rebuild of a site and the efficiency overall. Again, during the public inquiry, there were two positions set out by M&S and by SAVE. Both disagreed with each other, and we'll see what the inspector has to say about that. A scheme which has just been granted consent last week at Major Planning Committee is Garfield House. This is on Edgware Road. You may know the Tesco Express on Edgware Road. This is a new office development by Hopkins and Portman Estate. We had a lot of pre-application discussions about this. It's an exemplar sustainable building. It is a demolition, but they have gone a long way to creating a building with a minimum impact. We had a number of concerns about this project. We issued some objections in principle about the, as you can see, well, slightly obscured on this slide, and probably because this is the applicant slide by the trees, but the long facade, it's about 80 meters, and it's a long, very slab-like facade. We were worried about the lack of articulation and the materiality. Westminster did grant the consent, but there are a number of conditions imposed on the applicant to review those, and we'll continue our conversations with them to get that as best as it can be. All right, I'll try not to take too long. This is a scheme at 29 Marylebone Road. Again, I have a question about this later, but I'll just say this is a scheme by the University of Westminster. It's just along the way here. Oh, sorry, this way. And we've raised a number of objections to this scheme as well. The planning authority, the planning officers I spoke to today, and they've got various concerns with the scheme, I think matching our own, and do not have a formal recommendation as of yet. The particular problem is at the rear of this building, and our objection refers to the overly aggressive and dominating rear additions, harming the amenity of neighbouring residents. So that is a significant problem with that. Adjacent at 25 Marylebone Road, on the left of this image, is another scheme which is coming to planning very shortly as well, and also has an impact on Bingham Place. This is an image inside the Seymour Leisure Centre. This is the current sports hall, or multi-use hall. We've been talking about this scheme for a very long time. We have been consulted on multiple occasions. We are not 100% happy that this is the right place for getting everything into this building. All of the fitness, the registrar's office, the library, all of the various constituent parts. And as Michael mentioned, it seems to be that by getting too much in, they are compromising in various locations. Also very concerned about the permeability and access to the building itself. As Michael mentioned, we have discussed the idea of moving the library out and back to Marylebone Square. That is a conversation that is ongoing and receiving a little bit of traction, certainly within the people that I speak to. So we'll see how that goes. This is the last one, which is a very new project called One Chapel Place. You may recognise this is some church name has gone out of my mind, but a Grade 1 listed church, top of Vere Street. That's House of Fraser to the left, behind the church. The green building behind the church is the new proposal. And not surprisingly, looking at this image, we have already said that it is far too large. It is about 11 stories, and I think the existing is 5 or 6. We know that Westminster officers who attended the meeting we attended are also equally concerned by the scale of this application. I'd just also say that we have on our website, there is a planning page. We distribute planning news and details of all public exhibitions on that page. There's a lot of consultation going on. And as soon as we get notified of any public consultations, websites, we always put that up on our website as early as we can. And I'm going to ask, I've got a question later on about planning responses. I'll come to that. I'd just like to conclude by thanking a number of people that we work with for their time. First of all, I'd very much like to thank Westminster's senior planning and design officers, who we meet regularly and have very good relationships with, and in some cases shared frustrations. I'd also like to thank Westminster councillors, one in the front row today, who also are engaging with us on in a number of areas, on a number of projects, and that collaboration and coordination and relationship is greatly appreciated. I'd also just like to, there's one more thing. We've been arguing, suggesting a design review panel in Westminster. This is an independent design review panel to assess projects. And I'm very glad to say that after a number of meetings with officers and councillors, that this is set to progress in 2023. And we're very keen to see that coming forward. My very last thank you is just to thank both the estates, the Portman Estate and the Howard Walden Estate, because we regularly meet with them to look at their projects and their 10-year plans. And again, we're very grateful for their time in meeting with us and working with us to make sure that we get as good a result as we can on all of these planning issues that we do. What we seek is an exemplary design quality for all the buildings in Marylebone, and we work hard to achieve that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Neil, that's great. And now we come on to the elections. Before Kevin deals with those, I thought you might just like to know a bit of background on the changes. I've mentioned officer changes. Julie Redmond is going to stand as chair. I'm staying down as chair, but I'm putting myself up as secretary, at least for the next year, and Neil Ritson is standing as treasurer. Other changes, Tim Carnegie, who's presently deputy and helps us with IT, he's coming off the main committee, but he's still going to help us with various IT matters and on the newsletter. Families, Yihi Wu is standing down as families representation, but we thank her for her work she's done over the past year, and she's going to continue working closely with Marylebone mums and dads, and we got a new person standing in her place for family. Richard Lovell standing down as police representative. Well, I'm pleased to say that he's staying with us and putting his talents towards business liaison and membership development and administration. Linda Davis, who was co-opted onto the committee during the days of COVID and did a really great job with our COVID volunteers, and has since taken the position of liaison person with Mean Societies, has widened that out, and now she's in the role of community liaison generally. Steve Thomas, the Marylebone District Residents Association, he's their chair, and he will be standing in place of Amanda Feeney, the former chair, who's now stood down. So that's a replacement. We usually have a representative of Hydra on the committee, so that's our new representative. I think everything else stays the same. No, it doesn't. We found someone for city management, and we found someone else for the same person for police, so we'll be asking you to elect him to that position. And we're delighted to have Heather Acton, former Marylebone Association chair, and obviously also former councillor and cabinet member in Hyde Park, and she's coming forward and is on hand for environmental issues. So that's in front on the bottom of your sheet you got there. She's got a subgroup dealing with environmental issues, and that's about it, I think. So basically on that, we'll hand over to Kevin, who will deal with the formality of the elections.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Now it's time to elect the officers and the committee members for next year. As Michael has already told you, Julie Redmond has put herself forward to be chairman of the association. Do I have a nomination? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All those in favor of Julie, hands up. Any opposition? No. Julie, congratulations. For honorary secretary, Michael has already mentioned that he is putting himself forward to take over as honorary secretary. Do I have a nom? Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor of Michael Bolt as secretary, hands up. Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, congratulations, Michael, stepping into the chair. Honorary treasurer, Neil Richardson, as Michael mentioned, has put himself forward as honorary treasurer, and he's with Hydra. Nomination?
I think he's here.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm good. Stand up.
Let everybody see you as you're an excellent.
That's Neil. Thank you. Nomination? Yep. Seconder? Yep. Thank you. All those in favor of Neil? Hands up. Any opposition? No. Congratulations, Neil. Welcome to the board. Committee members, the rest of the committee, what I'm going to do is read out their name. We usually have them in on block. Most of them are here today, so I just ask them to stand so you can see who they are. First, Guy Austin, Martin Bickett, Linda Davies, Rosemary Forgan, and Lois German are in the back. Richard Lovell, Stephen Quinn, Julie Redmond, again. Neil Wilson is up here. Naim O'Keefe. Is Naim O'Keefe? There she is. And Scott Story. There's your proposed committee for next year and going forward. And we also have Stephen Thomas, who couldn't be here today, and Mark Gazzola, who's down the back. You've seen him already. Nomination for the committee, we'll do it on block. Yeah, Paul, thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All those in favor, hands up. Anybody opposed? Thank you, you're all elected. And I'm not going to go through the rest, you've already covered it.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay.
No, that's fine. Just before we go on to questions, Julie, having been elected as chair, would you like to say a few words? Literally, it can just be a few, or you can say no.
To the MA committee, you've chosen me to represent you as chair, and I'm humbled by and grateful for your trust. The Marylebone I will be representing has faced profound challenge and change over the last few years. However, thanks to the huge effort and commitment of Michael Bolt and the members of the committee, the MA is facing the future with confidence and excitement as to what it can achieve in its next chapter. My first job as your new chair is to express sincere thanks to Michael Bolt, Kevin Coyne, and Tim Carnegie. The MA will never be able to thank you enough for all you've done.
Thank you so much.
So, many of you don't know me. I've lived and worked in Marylebone since 2005. I've lived everywhere, from Great Cumberland Place, New Quebec Street, and the last 7 years in Devonshire Place. I got married in Marylebone Town Hall, and I had my son in UCLH. Marylebone is an area I love, and one that I will work hard to serve while I'm lucky enough to chair the MA. I started in the MA in 2018. I happened to be canvassing for our MP, Nicky Aiken, and at one of the doors, Tim Carnegie answered, and the rest was history. I stood as a councillor candidate for the West End. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful. However, during this time, I became close with the various amenity societies in the West End and the surrounding areas, and gained a much deeper understanding of how valuable their work is and how similar the issues we all face are. My primary role as chair will be to continue the great work that Michael Bolt has done for the MA, and to represent the residents of Marylebone and challenge those that have power and influence over the area to make sure they recognise its specific changes that we face. Everyone who lives here should feel they have someone that will listen to them and give them a voice if they can't speak for themselves. The MA has found ways to listen to residents and make sure their views and worries are raised with those most able to influence Marylebone's future. I want to help the MA continue this vital service to the community. In terms of priorities, over the next 12 months, I want to concentrate on 3 things. First, I want to increase our membership by a target of 30% with dedicated campaigns targeting different members of our community. Secondly, I want to make content easier to access, to continue to give information alongside newsletter subscriptions and modernise some of our systems. Finally, I want to strengthen ties with the other societies, and this is the most important one for me, and work closer with them to focus on our shared agendas and make our voice a lot louder. These include the St. Marylebone Society, and thank you to its members that have come here today, And also the Marylebone Forum, thank you to Yale, who has also come here today, and the mums and dads with Tushna heading that up, and they will all work in conjunction with us. The area in which Marylebone sits is facing lots of challenges. Retail is struggling like never before. The balance of businesses in the area is shifting, and the focus on ultra high-end property is driving development and changing the faces present in our community. These changes can feel disorientating and disturbing, but they are also creating great opportunities for us to make a difference. The MA is already well respected in Westminster. The Soho Society commented last week that our newsletter puts theirs to shame. The St. Marylebone Society said the planning team and events team was second to none. So it is well respected because of the hard work and the selfless dedication of the committee. I look forward to chairing the committee as it continues this great work. Thank you.
We're now going to move on to questions. We've got quite a few questions, and I'm cognizant that time as always flies. It's surprised me just how late it is now. So I think that we'll summarise these. First of all, I'll find out if the people are in the room. I've got a question from Ruth Carman. Would Ruth be around? No. Okay, and she's asking if the Marylebone Association is aware of responding to two proposed developments on the Marylebone Road, University of Westminster and the former Methodist Church House, both of which back onto Bingham Place. The residents of Bingham Place are particularly concerned with the negative impacts they have on Bingham Place, being a quiet cul-de-sac. Neil, would you like to? Does yours just turn that?
Okay. I addressed this briefly in my presentation, but yes, we are very aware of both of those applications. Well, actually, I should say one is an application 29 and is currently ongoing, and we have expressed concerns and objection already. The second is due to be submitted, I understand, in the next couple of weeks. So once that is submitted, we'll see the full detail and we can respond accordingly. But we are aware of the issues potentially imposed on the residents of Bingham Place, and we will definitely seek to protect them and ensure there's no negative impact.
Thank you. Next one's from Michael Brosnan, Reader Seymour Leisure Centre. Is Michael here? All right, okay. So would you like to stand up and put your question?
I don't want to. No, to summarise.
Right, you want me to summarise? Well, we got what is the association's view on the centre becoming a community hub and no longer a dedicated building for fitness? Does the association believe that the fitness centre should no longer have control over its right to operate as a fitness centre? And why should the library be positioned so that it takes away the only natural daylight from the gym's paying members, who have been the fundamental purse of the Seymour Centre? And why has there been no public awareness in the media? And do any members of the association know people in the media that they can contact regarding how important natural daylight is on one's mental health? I will, and many members of the gym will be devastated that the library is going to push the gym underground with no access to natural daylight.
Neil already touched that.
Yeah, I think Neil has touched on this to some extent, haven't you?
So,
yeah.
Yes, I'll just run through those points though for you, Michael. I mean, I think the Seymour Leisure Centre is not only a building for fitness, but also for the community now. It has a lot of other aspects, the soft play area, there are rooms to use, to hire. So we believe that it should be a community space. The fact that it might change its name to Community Hub is a bit unsettling. But I think it should incorporate all of the factors. As I mentioned in my presentation, we feel that the Westminster are trying to push too much into the leisure centre at the moment. There are too many factors, and I would agree with you that the current space, the current proposed library location, will displace some of the fitness rooms that benefit from natural light, and the current location does not. So that is not ideal. As I said, we've seen a number of schemes for it, a number of different arrangements, and that is ongoing. We are told the application will be made soon, but we don't have confirmation of that. Again, the position of the library, if it were to change, would have an unlocking effect on the Seymour Leisure Centre in the future. You've asked a question about public awareness in the media. I mean, I think it has been publicised very widely, so I'm not sure how I can answer that. That I believe it has been widely publicised. I think if there's anything else, perhaps we can pick it up over a drink.
Good idea. Next question from Denise Levy. Is Denise here? Right. And that is on green policies and restaurants. How does Westminster's green policy sit with their permission for cafes and restaurants to heat pavements? I think I touched on that myself earlier on. She cites one of the restaurants locally where the heaters are blazing, even when outside temperatures aren't that cold. Shops have their doors open, and the rationale being if they have them closed, they'll deter customers, but that shouldn't be allowed to pour heat out onto the pavements. So that's the question from Denise, and it's not up to the members of Marylebone or the Marylebone Committee to decide on what happens here. I don't know if we have a number of councillors here tonight. I don't know if someone wants to just bite the bullet on that one and mention anything about the council's continuing green policy. All right. It's Jeff. We got a roaming mic here. It's not switched on.
On the bottom, perhaps.
Why, thank you. This is very professional. I'm very, very impressed. I bet the Society haven't got one of these. I'm Jeff Barraclough. I'm councillor in Maida Vale, and I'm part of the new leadership of Westminster Council. My responsibility is planning and economic development. Specifically, the question was about heaters outdoors. They are really annoying, as are shops that keep their doors open. We have limited powers, unfortunately, to control much of this. We can't stop shops opening their doors if they want to. It's a weird thing, because fashion retail always believes the doors must be open. Department stores always have them closed. And it doesn't seem to stop people going into department stores, but it's one of these things people believe in retail. In terms of heaters, if they're not blocking the pavement, you're allowed to have them. We advise strongly that they are electric rather than gas. If they're permanent structures, then we can control them through planning permission. But again, you need a very good reason to refuse them. And at the moment, because of the way the government deregulated after the COVID, it actually wants to encourage outdoor dining, and this is obviously one reason that can take place. So I've a lot of sympathy with the person asking the question, but unfortunately I don't think there's a great deal that we can do at the moment under current powers, unless anybody knows different, in which case please come and see me afterwards, because I'd be very keen to find out.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. I wonder, while you're on your feet, actually, you've got the microphone, go forward to a question from Roger Shorter, who probably isn't here either. But his question is on greening and plant containers. Whilst in favour of extra greening, additional plant containers we've seen on Oxford Street and elsewhere simply become receptacles for rubbish dumping. They should be discouraged until local authority is capable of properly managing them. And he's also asking if M&S on Oxford Street could be listed. Well, I think we know the answer to that. That's been attempted already. And he has a question on rubbish. He says dumping rubbish in the streets. This seems to be getting worse since you've been elected. Not you personally, Jeff. Since the Labour Party have been elected. Are these matters connected?
So I'll take those in reverse order. With the exact same contractors doing the exact same schedule with the exact same management, exact same crews as previously. So we haven't changed anything. What we have done is, so we're going to declare rubbish hotspots and have task forces and SWAT teams on particular locations. So please drop me a line and let me know where these locations are, and we'll make sure we get some focused action on them. It's a bit of whack-a-mole because if you control one location, then the people who want to go and dump somewhere else. But we do know that the minute some rubbish gets on the street, everybody walking past thinks, I can dump rubbish there, it's okay. So do appreciate the need to have these hotspots and get the SWAT teams on it. So please drop me a line and let me know where they are. Just to add on Marks and Spencer's, the building is not listed and it's not in a conservation area. So Marks and Spencer's could legally demolish it tomorrow. The building has no protection. But we're waiting January when we expect the report from the planning inspector, and then Michael Gove can take an unlimited amount of time to make a decision. There's no timetable on that. And we won't find out what the planning inspector says until Michael Gove has taken his decision. So this could go on for some time, or it could be very quick. What was the first question? I've forgotten now.
First question. So I moved on. Greening. All those planters in Oxford Street with rubbish in them.
Yeah, so I think many of us think planters are not a great solution for greening the urban environment. They're better than nothing, but as the questioner pointed out, they need a management plan. So every time a planter is put in the street, there's got to be a plan about, well, who's going to water it and who's going to pick up the rubbish. Where that happens in the West End, normally the BID, so the new West End company, for example, go around every morning and they pick rubbish out of the planters that they've put down. But clearly, during the course of the morning, the afternoon, we can get rubbish in there. What we'd like to see is trees in the ground. Rather than planters. It's really difficult in many urban locations because there's so much stuff under the pavements, pipes and wires and so on. So to get a meaningful amount of trees in our main streets, you need to either have curb build-outs or narrow the highway and put in wider pavements. And as we go through with the new refurbishments, both Regent Street and Oxford Street, which we're going to be briefing you guys about, Marylebone Association, so don't worry, not going to do anything that we haven't talked to you about first. We do hope to get trees in the ground, because if you permanently widen the pavement's already widened and temporary, but if they go permanent, then we can get more trees in, because hopefully, as you get under the highway, there's less gubbins, and so trees will be able to take and be able to grow. But I appreciate the point from the questioner. I'd much prefer to see real vegetation in the ground.
Jeff, do you fancy, while you're on your feet, tackling e-scooters and buses? Would that be sort of up your street?
Surely, yes.
Yep, okay. So from Liz Lovell, we have a question about e-scooters. I know she's here, but I can just summarise it, that she feels that it's an outrage that so many illegal e-scooters have been driven on the roads and the pavements, and that I know she's had a near miss, and one of her friends was knocked over and suffered quite badly. And that's quite a common experience in Marylebone. So that's the one on e-scooters. And Di Latham, who is, I think here, should Di? I thought I saw her. Oh, she's waving her hand there. Shall I summarise, or do you want to? Yeah. Okay. And that really is about the culling of buses, the deliberate destruction of the West End bus network by the mayor. Nothing short of discriminatory attack on the elderly and disabled, who all prefer overground service and whose loss is immediately felt by the shops on Oxford Street. The deprivation makes it almost impossible to come straight here or get away without several bus changes. And we're asked what we're going to do about it. Well, we can't. So what can you do, Jeff?
Sadly, I don't also control the buses. But a wider point about transportation in London, because it is vital that we have a good, well-funded, efficient, rapid transit system, because modern cities need that. And if they don't have it, then people either don't travel or they get into cars, and we have congestion and air pollution and so on. Coming out of COVID, revenue in Transport for London fell dramatically because people stopped taking the tube. And the way that transportation works in London is the tube subsidises the buses. Buses lose money, the tube makes money in normal circumstances. And the huge cut in income of the tube, which is still running at 85% of normal, is having a major impact on TfL's finances. And consequently, we're reliant on the government to top that up. London's the only city in the world, I believe, where it's primarily funded by fares. In most cities, there's a large government grant or regional grant that pays for transportation, but here it's tube fares that keep everything afloat. Used to get vehicle excise duty. All the excise duty in London on cars used to go to TfL. That was taken away a few years ago by George Osborne when he was Chancellor, and that took £1 billion out of the system. So London as a whole generates a £40 billion tax surplus that goes to fund the rest of the country. I don't think it's unreasonable for us to get some of that back to fund our services. Now, I have a small amount of good news, which is that the latest, the new government, which was less crazy than the last government, the new government has come to a deal with TfL and the mayor. And so I think there will still be bus cuts, but they will be significantly less onerous than we'd feared. What was the first question, Michael? Sorry,
So what are we on the second question?
E-scooters.
E-scooters. Yes, they are really annoying, aren't they? So it is actually not legal to have your own e-scooter and ride it on the pavement or on the road. It's a crime, and if the police catch you, they will confiscate your scooter. Although I'm not sure the police spend much time trying to do that, but if they did, they could catch lots of people. You're only allowed to use the hire scooters. The real issue we find, because people are using the hire scooters much less, they tend to be taking trips away from walking and away from bicycling rather than away from cars. So they're not really reducing congestion, and they do risk, if they go on the pavement, of hitting people. But the main thing we're faced at the moment is the bikes, the electric bicycles, because they're not licensed in Westminster, so there's no infrastructure available, and people just leave them lying around. And for those with pushchairs or wheelchairs or with partially sighted people, it really blocks the pavement. And I don't think, I'm not sure any of this stuff really makes sense in the streetscape of central London. If you go to Berlin or you go to Warsaw, you have large boulevards, wide pavements, built on a grid, and you've got space for all this. Here, we're going to have to make space on the highway. So we've already got spaces for scooters. If the e-bike companies are willing to come to the table, and we've asked them and they still haven't said yes, then we'll make space for the e-bikes to be parked on the highway. But we are going to ask for some money for that, because we need to make sure that we're able to fund the services that we need in order to provide a safe environment. So I do quite agree on the e-scooters.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I think perhaps my next question will give one of our other councillors a go. What about illegal begging? We've had a few questions on this, and Di Latham had one of her follow-ups on that, and she's very concerned about the amount of illegal begging going on, and particularly out on our high street. And a lot of this seems to be fraudulent because they're actually zoning in on foreign visitors. And there are good causes that need money, those that we should be supporting, not turning a blind eye to these scams. Also, well, I suppose we can deal with that. There's also, I think at the same time, a question from Dr. Christopher Rowland Payne regarding increasing crime on Devonshire and Wimpole Street, people getting their cars broken into. So I don't know if anybody would like to take on that. Barbara, was it? Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So my colleague Ian Rowley is very keen to address the public protection aspect of Marylebone High Street, and he is constantly liaising with the city inspectors, with the police, and we encourage residents not to give any money to the beggars, and they're generally quite a group of people that are either involved with a Roma group, or an organised group, or they're people who are feeding a habit but do have actually housing. And it's really important, if you make an assessment and somebody looks like they're in need, that they're reported to streets, I can't remember quite actually. Pardon?
Yeah, I'm doing it. Don't worry.
Well, to the city inspectors and the, there's the, streets, there's a website for the rough sleepers that's really important to, well, in fact, yes, do go to the Westminster site because it will direct you in the correct location. And then what was the other question?
We got the begging and
The robberies.
The scams. Let's carry on.
Well, we're definitely constantly in touch with the police over the robberies. So that, again, it's really important to report that and get a crime number so that you can make your claim to the insurance. But it's very unlikely that the police will take it any further, even if you can find some sort of CCTV. Somebody did report it the other day, and we took it further, and the police felt that the CCTV was 17 hours long, and they didn't have the manpower to look into that, and which was very sad because it was quite a big claim. But so definitely, again, report it, and particularly to the police, which they're making it easier and easier to report crimes so that they have a record, and then put the right resources into the different types of crimes. And then scams. What kind of scams?
I think it's the people that sit on the pavements with cards saying they're very hungry and then get collected in a big van at night and taken somewhere to overnight and then come back in the morning. Then the money's distributed amongst other people. Anyway, I mean, we've probably covered enough on the begging front.
Scams is enormous.
Yeah.
And there are new types of scams that are coming up all the time. I was actually scammed the other day. Somebody rang me, somebody put a message up on WhatsApp and said, "Hi, Mom, M-O-M, how are you doing?" And I had a few rounds of conversation thinking it was my son who was working out abroad. And then I got an inquiry, "Hey, I'm a bit hard up at the moment. Can you lend me £3,500? So, you've got to be careful with scams. They're evolving, they're changing, they're getting more sophisticated. Although I don't know if this is the same thing with the people on the street. Yeah, you do have to be careful. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Question from Paul Neville. Paul, do you want to ask it yourself, or shall I read it out? So Paul's asking, can we please have the monthly responses to planning applications back on the website, perhaps a link with the newsletter, and could the MA Planning Committee try and ensure that its comments on planning applications appear on the website, that's a WCC website, in advance of the planning hearings so that we are able to read their responses. Members need to be aware of what's in the pipeline as well as recognising the hard work of the planning subcommittee. Neil, that's an obvious one for you.
Thank you for your questions, Paul. Yes, you can have the monthly responses back on the website. It's been a secretarial issue. We did have some secretarial help and an email coordinator. That is now, unfortunately, that lady was unable to continue. We need to find out a new way of doing that. But the answer to the question is yes, we're working on it, and we will get them back online as quickly as we can. Planning Committee comments on planning applications appear on the Westminster website in advance of planning hearings. We respond as quickly as we can. We tend to take a bit longer than possibly the 21 days. We're given 28 days technically. Sometimes we're beyond the 28 days just because of the timings of the receipt, and then we have planning meetings as well to discuss contentious applications. So sometimes they come in a bit late. They're always in advance of the actual hearing. They're always there, although sometimes they're not there because Westminster don't allocate them correctly on the website, so you can't see them. I had one, yesterday, which has been addressed by the team. So that's again, we will get the responses back in as quickly as possible, and we'll make sure they're on the website correctly. In terms of pipeline, Paul, as well, I think Michael and I have discussed this, and we will try and sort this out going forward. But what we'll try and get to do is, I make a monthly report, a report to the committee meetings, where I have a pipeline stream. So what I'll try and do is perhaps try and get an edited version of that onto the newsletter, so major projects coming forward can be seen going forward. Again, so all of these things we're working on and we will bring forward. I hope that's okay.
Okay. Peter Lilly wanted to say something. We can get the mic to you. I thought we had someone in charge of the mic, but obviously not. Hello, Peter. Patrick, sorry.
Hello.
Peter. I don't know.
Hello. Oops, there you go. Hello, I'm Patrick Lilly, not Peter Lilly. Peter Lilly was a very famous Conservative MP, and I'm not. I want to pick up on the point about planning, is that residents for a long time have felt very locked out by this process. It is a judicial process. I don't understand it, and I worry that many of those who want to participate in that process, to object to things, we don't fully understand the reasons why decisions are made. So Westminster Council are carefully looking at the idea of having a support worker to advise amenity societies and the experts who probably know more than most of us. So in due course, there will be paid for, I believe, by Westminster Council, Jeff, that will support objections to planning. It's a complicated one because there'll be a lot of demand for that officer. At the moment, we have a staff member at the Citizens Advice who supports objections to licensing, and he's proved invaluable. But planning's a lot more complicated, so it needs to be rationed in some way, whether it's just to provide the officer support for objections to big planning, or is it just to offer amenity societies some expert legal advice to help them oppose things like that. And I'd also like to say that we hope and pray to be far better at consulting people, listening and providing open ways to deal with the issues that we all face. People's opinions matter, and next week I'm going on a course to learn what is a good consultation and what is not, and I think every councillor, Conservative or Labour, would benefit from going on that course. Right, thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And so sorry, obviously we all know you're Patrick, and someone was whispering in my ear, so I blame it on a long evening. There were quite a few other questions, but refreshments beckon in the Browning room, and so basically there were questions on matters we all already dealt with, and I won't raise, I don't think those people in the room, we had questions on Manchester Square, we had questions on Piazzas, and we had a number of questions on Regent Street, but we've sort of covered all of that. But I know, and I think I'll probably get this wrong as well, is it Peter Freeman, maybe he's left now, I don't know, was fairly eager to ask a question earlier on in the evening. I hope I got the name right, and that was on the One Chapel Place project. Okay, you're happy to do that. I just wanted to make sure you weren't sitting there and felt you never got a chance to have a say. Great. Well, in that case, as I say, there are refreshments, which I'm sure we'd all be very grateful to partake in after this time. I'll just hand you back over to Kevin because he wants to round up in his final moments as secretary.
Oh, what do I want?
I don't know. Just say something. Is there anything you want to say before we finish?
Yes, everybody enjoy the refreshments and so on. It's been a great 25 years. I look forward to seeing you around town when I visit Marylebone with Stephen. So thank you all again, and congratulations, Michael, stepping into the... And it's been a great pleasure working with you, actually. You know, with the forum. And, no, I know, it was, but I am saying it now, and for all the right reasons. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it.
Right, we're all done. So, refreshments in the brownie room.
In the brownie room. Let me take up my little box.
Yeah, you want to open that?
We're going to fill it with something.
It's,
Oh my God.
I know,
Jeez.
it's not cheap.
He wasn't insinuating.
No, I wasn't at all. Oh my.
Yeah, the read, it's all there. It's all there, and it done.
Association 97. General appreciation, grateful appreciation for 25 years of service to the MA. November 2022 AGM. Very nice, thank you.
Yes.
Really nice.
You can be swigging your porter out of that. And,
I'll keep it in the box, but I'll show it around to people. Patrick.
I think it's Peter Freeman.
Look at me.
I just keep whispering in my ear, Peter. Interesting, I know the bloke so well. Someone says Peter, yeah. So I just said the same thing as Kevin whispered in my ear. Peter Freeman.
That's very nice.
This all belongs to
The church, I think.
This is mine. I'm going to.
Okay, well that I think went really well.
Think so?
Yeah.
You're certainly mastered 25 of them altogether. So.